Colombia has big energy needs and big plans. Here's the problem. The oil industry is finding it harder and harder to replace reserves. In 1998, the country had 2.5 billion barrels, and now it's just 1.8 billion. One hope is to use fracking, which could increase the country's oil reserve life to 15 to 20 years from around 6 right now. But commercial development is currently tabled with the exception of some pilot projects. The other big part of its future is green. The country has ambitious plans for a 30-fold increase in the amount of solar and wind energy it generates over the next 3 years. And to get there, it will auction 15-year contracts for renewable power, and it needs the private sector to install 1,500 megawatts of solar and wind from 50 now. All of Latin America is opting for an aggressive clean energy push. Colombia, though, has the advantage, especially over Argentina, stuck in an unstable political situation and upcoming election cycle, and over Venezuela, suffering from an economic collapse. Colombia wants as much as 10% of its energy from those renewable sources by 2022, and now it's got to deliver. I recently caught up with the minister, and I asked her about her plans for renewable energy.
One of the most important things of my agenda is regarding renewable energy and how are we going to make sure that we accelerate the introduction of variable renewable like solar, wind, biomass, and other forms of energy. So Colombia has a matrix that is pretty clean. Our mix, we have 70% of hydro in our power mix, that we need to accelerate the introduction of solar and wind. So we will be holding an auction in October, and we will pass from 50 megawatts, that's around 0.1% of the total installed capacity, to 10% of our power mix of variable renewables by 2022. So what we announce is that 70% of the energy, of the power mix, will come from renewable energy by 2030. That is the most ambitious goal set by renewable energy in all around the world. For you to have an idea, European Union has set a target of around 30 to 35% by 2030. And the rest of the countries or regions that have set a target are between 25 and 40%. So Latin America sets a very important target, setting up 70% of renewable energy by 2030 in the power mix.
What do you have to do to get there?
We have set up the right fiscal incentives, so you do not have any VAT, you do not have any trade tariffs, zero trade tariffs, and you also have the possibility of deducting on your corporate tax rate 50% above the 100% that you always deduct with depreciation of all the investments made in renewable energy. So all that framework gives you the possibilities of accelerating that energy transition.
What kind of fiscal ability does Colombia have to do that? For example, like Argentina couldn't really do that. Venezuela couldn't really do that. Like what do you have that other people don't?
Well, really, Colombia has a very stable macroeconomic scenario, and we have been very prudent in terms of fiscal usage. Actually, we're going to have this year a surplus, so that's something that is very positive. And what we have said is that in the tax reform that we passed through Congress in 2018, we put a lot of incentives in terms of new investment.
What kind of foreign money have you seen over the last year, and what are your targets, say, for the next 5 years?
So we have seen a very successful policy coming in, and in this semester we see that foreign policy grew 24%, and our target is for that continue to grow. I think that part of what the country is doing is that we want to diversify our economy. So definitely on oil and gas industry, and also in mining, and also in energy, we're seeing a lot of companies coming in. We see, for example, new investment coming from AES, that is a US company. We see Canadian companies coming to buy some thermal plants. 2 thermal plants have been bought in this semester. But also we want in other industries to come. So there is a big bet on tourism, a big bet in agriculture, and very important in all that has to do with technology.